Welcome back. In the last episode we created our slot that spawns on the actual container that we instantiated into the scene. As you can see, we can drag the items anywhere, right click, place them in slots, and we can actually stack them back up to the preferred maximum stack size that we define in the item class. Now what we want is to display a tooltip that spawns when the mouse goes over the slot. So if we go back to the scene, and if we right click on the inventory manager, come and click right click, click a UI, need to pass it in an image. In this case I'm just going to use this one, and we need to resize it to a size that we need. So for me I'm going to choose about 150 looks good. No, that seems a bit too big actually, so say 100 by 35, that seems reasonable. Now what we need is, just quickly rename this to Tooltip. We need a child, which is going to be a text, and we need to resize this to the same size as the image. So if you just click on text, and to actually resize this properly, what you can do is hold shift here, and then if you press alt, it will actually automatically resize it. Now down here, what we can say is that we want the tooltip to spawn in the center, but not actually, it needs to be on the left hand side in the middle, so not on the bottom or the top, well, obviously center. So now what we can do is, if we go back to our tooltip and we add a horizontal layout group, we need to say child control size, width and height. Now an add component, what we need here is a content size fitter, and in the horizontal fit we need to set that to preferred size. Now if we just pass this in some margins, so say 10 on, actually bottom and top do not need margins. So now if we go back to text and we change this about a bit, we can say this is a default tooltip, and it will actually resize the parent tooltip. So now what we need to do now is, if we go back to the actual tooltip we've just created and we click on here, we need to change the pivot to the bottom right. So if you hold shift and click on the bottom right, when we highlight over a slot, the tooltip will actually be displayed from this point here. So it doesn't actually go and draw over the slot when we're looking at it. So what we also need to do is quickly add a component called a canvas group. No, not a canvas. A canvas group, and we need to uncheck interactable and block swaycasts. Now, if we go to our scripts folder and click on inventory system, we need to create a new script called, tooltip. And if we just quickly open this up in Visual Studio, we'll just clear out some of this, make it actually look better. Sorry, there we go. Right, we're going to need a couple of methods to start with, and we need to use the Unity Engine.ui namespace. So we're going to need a public text tooltip text and a private image my image, and a boolean for simply checking if we are hovering. So now we need a start method. In here we can say my image is equal to get component image, and then we just need to my image dot enabled is equal to false. So now we need another method called public void set tooltip, and inside here we need to pass this in a string for item name. Now we need a couple of if statements. So inside here we can say if item name dot length is more than 0, so it actually has text. We can say is hovering is equal to true. Tooltip dot text is text is equal to the item name that we just passed in, and we need to enable the image like so. Now if we don't have text, we need to set the tooltip text to an empty string like so. We need to say my image dot enabled is false, and set is hovering to, not that, false, like so. So now if we go down here and create another method called update, we need to say if we are hovering, then we can simply set the transform of the tooltip to the mouse position, like so. Let's just quickly go back into here, see if we've got any errors. That's a no. So now if we click on the tooltip that we just created, we need to drag this this script onto it. Let's just minimize all these. I need to pass in the text, and that should be the tooltip done for now. Now what we need to do is go back to our inventory manager. And inside here we need to create a couple more variables. So what we're going to need is a private tooltip, and in here, in the start method, we can define our tooltip is equal to get component in children as tooltip. Now we need a couple more methods, so we can add one towards the bottom called public void draw tooltip. We need to pass this in a string, and that'll be item name. So we can say if the current open container, now we can simply just say tooltip dot set tooltip, and we can pass in item name, like so. Now to actually get this to draw, we need to go back into our slot, and where we're actually at the top, we need a couple more of these pointer handlers. So we can say I pointer enter and I pointer exit. So we'll just quickly add these methods. These should be now down at the bottom. What have I just done? No, that's right, yeah. So in here, we can say on pointer enter, we need to get a reference to the current dragged item, like so, and that will be inventory manager dot get dragged item stack, and then we need another one which is going to be a copy of the one we've currently got now. So copied stack is equal to my stack dot copy, like so. So now we need an if statement. So if the copied stack is not empty and the current drag stack is empty, we can display a tooltip. So we can simply just say inventory manager. Let's get the lowercase one. So inventory manager dot draw tooltip, and we can pass in our my stack dot get item dot item name. And now thinking about it, we don't actually need to copy the actual items, the item stack that's currently in the slot. So if we just get rid of this here, we can replace copy stack with my stack, like so. And that should now display our tooltip. And simply down here, we can just pass this in here, and we can say, instead of giving it an item name, we can say string dot empty. So now in our on left click method, we can simply do, in this one we are taking the item and putting it into the dragged item stack. So we need to say inventory. Actually, before we do this, we can actually create a class towards the top here, and we can say public. That doesn't actually need to be public, so it won't be accessed by other classes. So private void set tooltip. We'll pass that in a name. So name in, like so, and this will be inventory manager, inventory manager. Just change that to the lowercase one. Dot draw tooltip, and we'll pass this in the name in. Now if we go down to the bottom where we created our on pointer enter and on pointer exit. What's going on here? Like so. We can actually change inventory manager to simply set tooltip. I will just pass this in this name here. And get rid of that. We can also do the same down here at the bottom. So if we change the item name to a string.empty, like so. Now, just copy and paste this. If we go up to our on left click where we started typing out the method, now we can say set tooltip, and this will needs to be equal to a string.empty, as we've taken the item, so there will no longer be one in the stack. Now in this one here, where we're checking if the stack has an item and we're not currently dragging anything, where we are setting the stack in the item from the dragged item, we can actually say set tooltip, and this will be equal to my stack dot get item dot item name. Now in this one here, what we can say is set tooltip is equal to my stack dot get item dot item name, and in the one below it, set tooltip, and this will be an empty string, like so. Now in this little one at the bottom, in here we can say this also needs to be an empty string, because we currently cannot place anything in the stack. So there we go. Now on right click, if we are dragging something and we're half in the stack, this needs to be set tooltip. That needs to be an empty string because we're now dragging something, so we do not want to see the name of the tooltip. And in this one here, this also needs to be an empty string because we're placing an item in the stack, but we are also still dragging something. And in the one below it, another empty string, because we are dragging something and we have placed something in the slot, but because we are dragging something, we do not want to see the tooltip. So now if we save all these and go back to here, quickly and wait for that to compile, we could also just disable the image on the tooltip itself to stop seeing that in the scene. So now if we play, press E, we can actually see the name, like so. And if we pick something up, it disappears, place it down, reappears again. So if I just quickly go back to slot, where we are placing the item, the slot is not empty, we're not dragging anything. This one here, if my stack dot is empty, so if the slot is empty and the stack is being dragged, this should now show the item name. So if we just quickly take a look here, we're actually setting the stack, so that should in theory show. No, that is alright, yep. So let's quickly just go back here. Yep, there we go. Although what we can do as well is change the size of the text. So if we say 20, and just quickly try that again. There we go. It's now changing the name of the items. It's now changed the same size, and they're actually resizing the image as well properly. So now we don't get that weird bit of extra space towards the end of the item name. So now I can show you how to go about doing the toolbar. So we just quickly, let me just hide that and move that off screen. Now we need to create a new prefab container. In this case I'm just going to copy over the player inventory. And this one, if my slots are 50, I actually want 6. So in this case, it'll just be 300 by 50. And I actually don't want to be able to see the background on this. So if I just move that down to the bottom, I can actually disable the image here. And I can rename that to player hotbar. And now I need to drag this in here. And we can delete that. Now if we go to player manager, we need to add a new reference to our hotbar. And we can rename this to player hotbar. I need to pass in the player hotbar prefab, like so. Now, what we need to do is go to the player, edit this script here. Where we're defining our new inventory system, we can say instead of 18, we want this to say 24, like so. And now we need to go to container player inventory. Just wait for that to compile. Place your inventory, your player inventory back into the scene, and in here we are actually placing images at -250 and 70. So we'll just quickly drag our slot in, like so, and that is -250. What did I just say? -170. No. Hello? Oh, -125. My bad. -125 and 70. That is where our first row of slots are going to be. Now, that's going to be the second. That's going to be the third. So down here, what's going on? There we go. We actually want to increase the size of the player inventory. So do this. That all looks right. Drag these like so. And now the slot, the hotbar slots will be further away from the inventory to actually get it's sort of like a visual representation of the way hotbar is compared to your main inventory. So what we need to do is go back into here, and we can say, we could just simply change that to 90. We could change this one to 40. We can now change this one to -10. And the hotbar will start at -90, like so. Now, we need to define our hotbar slots first. So for int I equals 0, I is less than 6, I ++. And we can say add slot to container. This is going to be the player inventory, and this will now take I as the slot index. And in here we can say this starts at -125 and -90. So -125 plus 50 times I, and that starts at -90, like so, and the slot size will be 50. Now in here we need to change these sizes, but first this will need to be 6 plus I, this one needs to be 12, and this one needs to be 18. Now our first row of slots in the inventory, this will be the ones at the top. So these ones here. This one now starts at 125 and 90. So if we change 70 to 90, go back here, do the same for the next row of slots. This one starts at 40, like so, and I believe this one starts at -10. Yep. So change that to 10, and now we have our hotbar slots displaying in the inventory. Just wait for that to compile. Now we can actually save this and just quickly go back to player just to make sure that's actually saved as a prefab. We can drag that over player inventory like so, quickly delete that. And now if we play, press E, you see our items now displaying the hotbar first. So now, how to get a hotbar? What we need to do is go to our container scripts, right click, create a new container player hotbar, like so. If we just open this up in Visual Studio, we'll get rid of this, And now we need to derive from container, like so. And now we need a public. I could just possibly copy this from here, like this. Or not, actually no. It'll be better off me typing it out. So we need a constructor, so public container player hotbar. This takes in an inventory of container inventory, and then colon inventory player inventory. This also needs colon, call it base container and player. Open and close them, and for the for here, our hotbar. Let's see, container player hotbar. Drag that in. That spawns at the bottom. Now if we quickly add our slots to this, we can see that our slots start at 0 and -125 in the X. So for, don't know what happened there, for int I equals 0, I is less than 6, I plus plus. Add slot to container, player inventory, that'll be I. X was -125, and in the Y was 0, and the slot size is 50. So now we need to do an override. So override, and this will be get container prefab, and this will need to return inventory manager dot instance dot get container prefab. We need to pass in player hotbar, like so. Let's just make sure that's already been created when the scripts are compiled. Oh, I've deleted my inventory manager. Go back. Player. There we go. And yep, there we go. Just make sure this name lines up with the one we've passed in here. So if we do that, we do not need you open. This all works. Now what we need to do is go into the player, like so. And where we're actually closing the container, what we can just do now is, instead of close, because if you remember in the open container method, it actually closes one if there's already one open anyway. We can say, instead of close, open, dot open container, and we need to pass in new container player hotbar, and we pass in null, because we don't have a container, it's mainly just, and then my inventory, and we can do the same down here where we use an escape to close. And that should be that. Now we have a working hotbar. Let's just quickly go here. I know what I've done. We'll go back to container player hotbar. Next to where we've placed the X, we can say plus 50 times I. Now the slots will actually instantiate over. Let's just quickly see that again. Let's press E, escape, and there's our hotbar. And if we actually move the items around here like this, we can now see that they'll appear. And if we add one of these to every slot, they appear in the hotbar, like so. And that should be that. Now, to get the actual hotbar selector, what we can do is we create container hotbar like so, and we need to add in the, just for reference, the images, the slots, like this. Just add, go back to you there. We need to duplicate this. Whoa. Hang on. Add you there. Add you there. Add you there. Duplicate. That one there, like so. You there. And the last one. Right. Now we need to create a new image over the top of these. So if you right click image, we'll set this to the size of the slots, so 50 by 50. And here we'll say selector. And we can pass this in an image. In this case I've simply got this, like so. and we'll just place this over the first selected slot, like this. So that'll be 0. Now, we need a script. So if we go to inventory and then containers, we can say create new container player hotbar selector. And if we open this up, it's compiling. To open that up, we can say that needs to derive from running behavior, so we can leave that. We'll just get rid of these comments. We need a private player as a reference to the player, and a private rect transform my transform. So now in done that again. So now in start we can say player is equal to find object of type player in the scene, and also my transform is equal to get component rect transform, like so. And in here we can say if player does not equal to null, so we have actually found one, player, like so. Now we need to go back to our player script, and here this is where we need to define what slot is selected. So if we give this a new private int selected hotbar index, and we'll keep that to 0. Down here under update we need to create a new method, and this one will be called private void update selected hotbar index. This will be passed in a float direction, and down here we can say if direction is more than 0, direction is equal to 1. If direction is less than 0, direction is equal to -1. My bad. If for selected index minus equals, cast that to an int, direction, the selected index is less than 0, then we need to add 6, as that's how many slots we have in the hotbar. Why do you keep adding the space? And down here we say while selected hotbar index is more than or equal to 6, selected hotbar index is equal to 0. No, we can keep the same as in the for loop, so we can say minus equals 6. There we go, like so. Now we need another method, public int get selected hotbar index. This will just return selected hotbar index. Now in our update method at the bottom, we can say update selected hotbar index, also taking a float, in this case our scroll wheel. So input dot get axis mouse scroll wheel, like so. So now back into our hotbar selector script, where we've passed in if we actually have a player, we can say vector 2 pos is equal to new vector 2 player dot get selected index times 50, and that will be a 0. And at the bottom here we can say my transform anchored position is equal to pos. And I believe we actually need to pass this into brackets, and we can say minus -125, like so. We can now add that to the selector game object. So selector like this. Get rid of all the slots, and that actually needs to stay in the player hotbar prefab. So for Neo, go to our containers, drag that in there like so. Just quickly remove this from the scene. Now let's see if this works. No, where is that? Oh, it actually does. Right. we're going to need to set the slots as drawn in the background. So if we go to our original container script, where we're adding the slots, we can say set as last sibling, set as first sibling. Let's save that, go into our, to see if that works. And there we go. Use the scroll wheel. But just quickly before we end, if we go into our scripts and our player, in the start method we can actually set the hotbar to be the one that's that's spawned instantly. So in the start, we can now, ooh, my bad. We need to copy this and paste that in there like so. So the hotbar will be opened when we first play the scene. And I have an error. What have I done? Oh, my bad. I know what I've done. Just quickly paste that back into there like so. Now, just let that compile. We'll play that. Now the hotbar opens originally. Now if we press E, hotbar will disappear, player element will be displayed, escape, hotbar displayed. Right. In the next episode I'll show you how to open new containers like things like chests. But until then, there you go.